So Chris Causey's with us. Chris is our pastor from Encounter Church, and um, he's gonna give us a message here in a couple of minutes. And um, so after Chris gives a message, and he's gonna try to play a song. We'll see how that goes from a technology perspective. But then after that, for everyone who's here, after Chris gives his message and plays the song. Um, you can disconnect if you'd like to because nothing else will be coming through on Zoom. Um, but I'll just kick us off here and wanted to thank everybody who's here, who came over to Edgartown with us today, and also everybody who's joined on Zoom for us celebration of Riley's life. Um, it means a lot to both Andrea and I that you're here, and we really appreciate everyone's support. We want to make this a celebration of Riley's very short life, but very important life for our family. Um, so we're trying the technology thing, and we'll just all be patient if things go wrong. But so far, so good. And I'll tell you a little bit about the lighthouse that's behind me. If you can see it down the hill. We're here in Edgartown, Martha's Vineyard, and at the base of that lighthouse is the Edgartown Children's Memorial. Was founded about almost 20 years ago by um, a father in Boston who lost his son in a car accident, and a couple of years had passed after his son died, and he was he kept thinking he wanted some way to honor his son's life and was never really able to put his finger on how to do that. And so a couple of years after his son died, he was flipping through old family photos and saw a picture of his son standing in front of this lighthouse. And he was wearing a Nike t-shirt that said, "Just do it." Um, and it was that photo that gave him the inspiration just to go and do something. And so he partnered up with the Martha's Vineyard um, Museum to restore this lighthouse and turn the base of the lighthouse into a children's memorial. And after the service, we'll walk down there and see a stone that Andrea and I had placed at the base of the memorial that says Riley's name on it. There was some significance to the placement of the stone at the base of the lighthouse. The the stone faces in the northwestern direction, which is directly pointed at Canton, Massachusetts, which is Riley's hometown. It also happens to be 17 stones from the corner of the lighthouse, which was Andrea's favorite number 17. So that was very nice. And we also kind of looked at the other kids who are around that area, what their names were. Um, and Riley Stone is right next to Lauren Flynn. We don't know who Lauren is, but obviously the Flynn family family name. It's nice to have right next to Riley Stone as well. Um, Usually there's an annual service, a ceremony this weekend in September to honor all the children who have been lost too early. Um, this year, the big ceremony had to be canceled because of COVID. They didn't want to attract everyone to the lighthouse at the same time and draw a crowd. So it's sort of this day long ceremony of remembrance today. So even though we didn't have the big ceremony, it was important to us that we, still honored Riley's life, and it means a lot to us all that you've joined us to do that. So um, last year there were 7 new names added to the memorial. Um, Sadly, this year there's 43. There's 43 kids added to the memorial this year. So that's tough, but it's great that we have this memorial here that we can that we can do this. So I just wanted to give you some of that background, some of that context, and say thank you for being here. And now I want to hand it over to Chris Causey. Chris is going to speak for a few minutes and give us a message. And Chris, we just want to thank you as well. He's been great, spiritual advisor to us the last several months, and we really appreciate Chris's time and being able to join us over Zoom. So, Chris, let me hand it over to you. Oh, wait a second.
No,
Oh, okay. Chris, yeah, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Brian. It's a beautiful and tragic backstory to the Lighthouse, but I appreciate you sharing that, and just how gut-wrenching 43 kids added to that this year. It's a tragic number. My name is Chris. Like Brian said, I really hate this is the way I get to meet some of you. Just my few minutes listening in tells me a few things about this group that you probably are really fun and have a lot of joy, and you laugh a lot. And as a family, just the fact that you're present today shows how tight you are. And so I want to thank you for just coming together in the midst of what probably will be a year that none of us ever forget, for a variety of different reasons. That in this year, there's been some extreme tragedies, extreme uncertainty. In the midst of some of our lives, there's been extreme joy. And that this has been a year that's just naturally, I think, forever seared in our minds. And I love the fact that today we get to come together and celebrate Riley, whose name is forever etched in that stone at the edge of that lighthouse. And I want to give you a verse just to kind of frame our time, because a moment like this would Zoom, my desire and prayer is that really the screen and the earpiece would melt away, and that we would be reminded that we are physically together in celebration and in remembrance of a life. And in 1 Thessalonians 4:13, Paul, who's probably one of the most prolific writers of the New Testament, a Christian theologian, a man whose life was transformed by Jesus, writes, "Brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope." That sentence is a little vague in the way that he stacks two negatives on top of each other. What he's essentially saying is that the people he was writing to, Christians, grieve differently than the world. That we have both grief and we have hope. And that those two things aren't in opposition to one another. They're complementary. And that one of the best moments, I think, of this grief and hope kind of being present in the same moment is found in John chapter 11, and one of the more famous moments of Jesus's life, when he comes upon a funeral. It's one of his dear friends, a man named Lazarus, who had two sisters. Jesus was a close family friend of them, had stayed with them, traveled. And so when Jesus comes up on the funeral procession, everyone is still grieving, broken. Some of them, when they see him, say, "If you'd have been here, this wouldn't have turned out this way." And the verse I want to highlight just is verse 35, and it's the shortest verse, but I think in it being given that name, we miss how truly long and profound the verse is. It says that Jesus wept. And it says that when the Jews saw this, it said, "See how he loved him." That here is God in flesh coming onto a scene where he knows how he's going to end it. He knows what's going to happen. He knows the play-by-play, that he's about to bring Lazarus from the grave. And yet, in the midst of the grief, he weeps. And he weeps so hard that the conclusion people looking at him see is, man, he must have loved him. That sometimes we think of God as this distant, abstract kind of grandfather in the sky with some long beard who looks more like Gandalf than Jesus. And yet what we see in this passage is a God who steps into grief and who weeps with people, who feels their pain, who weeps over the moment that we're present in. And there's an interesting phrase that gets stated right after this, where it says that he was deeply moved. When John writes this in the language of the day, deeply moved isn't exactly what plays out. It's a little stronger than that. It's actually, he's mad. It's an indignation. He's severely pissed off at what's playing out in front of him. Because what he knows that we often forget is death was not supposed to be the thing that we experienced. And we see in Jesus two extreme emotions that should be present in moments like this. And this is something Brian and Andrea and I have talked about, because I think sometimes, especially if in the Christian bubble, sometimes we're told, oh, well, God needed another angel, or, we say these statements that are meant to make us feel better, but what they do is they rob us of the righteous anger and of the righteous tears and grief that Riley should not have died, that it was not okay, that there was a loss of something incredibly valuable that's priceless in her life being ended so soon. And I'm so grateful that Jesus showed us that it is okay to be extremely sad, that we don't have to apologize for our tears, and we don't have to apologize for the anger that we feel and what's played out in front of us, that God himself, even with all of his knowledge and power, demonstrated those two same emotions in front of the grave of someone he loved. And that if you feel those things today, you're not demonstrating a lack of faith. You're actually reflecting the fullness of our faith. And you're reflecting Jesus in that moment around that graveside. Because we are people who grieve. We grieve at the birthday songs that we don't get to sing. We grieve at the vacations that don't get to happen. Those are real. And so we grieve with sadness and with anger. But yet Paul says we don't just grieve. We grieve with hope. And it was that hope that comes present in that moment with Jesus as he's at Lazarus' tomb. A grief that recognizes how valuable a life is. How infinitely valuable Riley's life is. And yet, as he walks up to the tomb, he calls out and Lazarus walks out. And as he walks out, it says in verse 45 that many of them who came to the funeral saw what Jesus did, saw what occurred in that family, and they believed in him. And that God did not waste the death of Lazarus, and God will not waste the death of Riley. That her life speaks of a greater faith. Her life speaks of a greater hope. That even right now, because of Riley, Jesus and who he is being talked about. That God will not waste the stone in the story placed beside the sea. That as sure as the waves will come in and out, as sure as the moon will rise and fall and the sun will come up and come down, God's purpose and plan stands. And that he will use her life to demonstrate that faith. And that some of that faith is demonstrated not just in the miracle of what he did that day, but in the people who were present and how they responded. That Brian and Andrea, to the family, that future siblings will see the story of faith present as you've walked this journey of grief. That Riley's legacy is not written in stone. It's written in flesh, lived through your lives. In the way that some of us are forced to think about death, something that we normally don't reflect on. And yet it is the one thing that all of us will share in common. It is the one thing all of us will experience one day. And Riley causes us to think about the most essential deadline that we all share. To evaluate our lives and to say, what will we do with the years we have? How will we spend our life? And who will we follow in our life. That Jesus knew that he was going to open up a tomb. And my prayer over this family is that future siblings, future grandchildren will see a faith that I've watched develop in Brian and Andrea in the midst of their weakness. That any of you who exercise regularly or have ever lifted weights, you know that the irony of strength building is that the point when you are your weakest, the point when you have maxed out and the weight feels like you can't hold it anymore, it is at that moment that strength is actually being built. And that for Brian and Andrea, as they've walked this journey and they have felt the weight of this, they have felt the pain of this, that what is actually happening is not them growing weaker, it is actually their faith getting stronger. And this is what God did that day with Lazarus, and this is what God is doing today too. And that ultimately, the hope that was present that day was that Jesus knew the only way he could call Lazarus out of the tomb, because he knew all things, and he knew that it would be this moment, actually, of all the moments and all the miracles, it was Jesus calling Lazarus from the dead that would actually crystallize and finalize the assassination plan that would be set into motion that would lead to the cross. Because Lazarus was raised from the dead, it set into motion Jesus being crucified. And I think in there is a poetic picture, because the only reason Lazarus could walk out of the grave was because Jesus was about to go to his. And in going to his grave, he would pave the way so that sin and death would no longer have power over those who trusted and followed in him. And that is why, as Christians, Paul could say, we do not grieve like the rest of mankind. We grieve, we're angry, we're sad, we lament what's been lost. But we do it knowing that there is a resurrection power that's greater than the grave. That there is a hope that's stronger than even death. A hope that can bring this family tighter together. A hope that can bring life. And a hope that can ripple for generations to come. Even more faithful than the waves that roll in front of that lighthouse every single day. And I want to pray, and as I pray, when I wrap up, a song is going to play that Brian and Andrea wanted to play. And after that, I believe Katie will speak and read a section of Psalm that just reiterates and reemphasizes how infinitely valuable every life is. So let's pray. God, thank you. Thank you for today. Even in the midst of our grief, even in the midst of our struggle, thank you for the opportunity that we can come together even if we can't physically be together. Thank you that your presence is present with us. Thank you for Riley's life. Thank you for Riley's legacy. Thank you for the story that is not yet finished, that you are writing through her life. I pray that even today, as we gather and as we reflect and celebrate her, that you would allow this moment, you would allow her, actually, to point us to what she sees, the face of Jesus. That you would allow her to cause us to reflect on our life and our death. And that regardless of our age, regardless of our stage, regardless of where we've come from or what we have done or the choices we make, I pray that we would see that the hope and grace you have calls us all home to you. So thank you for how big and how wide and how great your love is. And may you help strengthen, sustain, comfort, and grant us strength in all the weak moments that lay ahead. And it's in your name, Jesus, I pray. Amen.
asked you, Lord, you answered. A little one you gave. The hardest part I never knew was that little one you take. But Lord, I trust you now. I know that you are good. And Jesus, I was wondering if you would hug him once for me. Hold him up real close. Let him sit upon your knee and tell him all the things we teach him about you. Whisper in his ear one more simple truth. Tell him that you love him and that we love him too. Waiting here right now, Lord, it seems so hard to do. Longing just to hold him like other mothers do. I know that you are faithful, your hand of grace I've known. But I ask you in the meantime, until you call me home, hug him once for me. Hold him up real close. Let him sit upon your knee and tell him all the things we teach him about you. Whisper in his ear one more simple truth. Tell him that you love him and that we love him too. And when the trumpet sounds, Lord, your face I long to see. And now I've one more reason to wait expectantly. And when I get to heaven and see all you have done, I know that I will understand, and to him I will run. I'll hug him once for me. I'll hold him up real close. He'll sit upon my knee and tell me all the things you've taught him about you. He'll whisper in my ear one more simple truth. He'll tell me that he loves you and that he loves me too. He'll tell me that he loves you, and Lord, I love you too.
All right, Chris, thanks very much. I really appreciate the message, and thank you for helping us with the song too. I'm gonna hand this over to Katie, who's gonna read a verse, and then Andrea's gonna say a few words, and we'll wrap up. Yeah, you guys can stay on Zoom, or you can disconnect, whichever you want to do. No one else will speak on Zoom.
Can everyone hear me? Oh, will they? All right. I can't see it. All right. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. You're welcome.
I've been really super. Can I just do this with one? Yeah, that was okay. All right, so I've been like super nervous. I don't know why, but I have been. So I typed this all out, so I'm kind of gonna just read. So my wedding 10 years ago is like most weddings. 1 Corinthians was read. Most of us know it goes, love is patient and love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrong. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. And now these three things remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. I'm sure none of you are shocked when I say I've spent time pondering the last line of this verse. I would wonder, how come it's love that's the greatest? Aren't faith and hope just as important? But it dawned on me during this season that now I've lived this verse and I've come to understand it more fully. Brian and my journey to conceive Riley, then losing Riley, has been one that really shattered hope and faith. But love did remain. Love poured out to all of you that are here and everyone on Zoom, but also people. I can't even list how many people. So every person who supported us. Love poured out through Brian, his support of me through this. When faith and hope couldn't be found, those around us, all of you, lived out Corinthians. I want to thank you for every action of love poured out on us. Thank you so much for being here today. And our love also for Riley never faltered, whether it was when we were celebrating that Riley was coming, or that 2-week wait, or then when we found out that, Riley had gone to heaven, our love for Riley never faltered. So I wanted to make sure to really try and convey how thankful I am to all of you here and all of you on Zoom and everyone that has supported us. And I realize today is both familiar and unique. It's familiar to us to gather and grieve someone we've lost, but it is unique because so often a little one is lost before the world meets him or her, and the grief happens behind closed doors. So I want to thank you for being willing to be a part of something unique and something that is different. I was so afraid the world wouldn't count on Riley since they never met him. Thank you for calming that fear, and thank you for being here. In doing so, I've counted our child life. Which, even though I'm crying, is the greatest comfort you could have given to us. We called today a celebration of Riley's life, and we want it to be just that. While brief, Riley's life did change our lives. This part is just something I wrote to Riley. Riley, we loved you before you came to us. We loved you while you were here with us, and we'll love you forever. I wanted you to know you have the most amazing man for a father. I wanted to watch him be your dad, and for you to learn and be like him. I wanted to watch you grow and teach you. I love that only Brian and I, create you at that exact time, at the exact time you were created. You made us a mom and dad, and are forever a literal part of us. I can't wait to hold you in heaven. And until then, I know you are I know there are so many people up there that probably haven't put you down and are hogging you. Play with Bucky Lynn, smile, play, and run up there. Mom and Dad will hold you one day. I love you forever. As my mom signs every one of our cards, your mom. There's a song, a Christian song called I Can Only Imagine. It's about imagining what your reaction will be when you get to heaven. I know this now. My reaction will be to run to our little Riley and hold her forever. As deep as the grief is, I'm so thankful Brian and I had Riley. I'm thankful Riley made us a mom and dad. I hope this next part makes sense. Makes sense to me. But someone asked me to think about what is now and what you hope it could be, and it could be anything. I told her I'll think about it out of an attempt to not be cynical, but the answer seemed to me to be obvious. What is now? Riley isn't alive. What is, I wish it were to be, for obviously Riley to be alive and growing. But in the spirit of playing along, I said, I hope for Riley to be alive, and I hope one day Brian and I are on this beach, one behind us, old and overlooking Riley's grown brothers and sisters, both biological and adopted, because it's been a dream since I've been in high school that we would also adopt kids and grandchildren. All of them knowing that they are happily enjoying this beach and the island because Riley lived. And the girl who asked me said, of course, Andrea, you will always wish for Riley. Your story will always include Riley. But the and in that sentence is important too. So we can love Riley and we miss Riley. There's an and. And while getting ready for today, I started to think that right now we have a glimpse of that and. We are all here today in one of the most beautiful places because Riley Moore, our smallest family member, lived and was loved. So thanks. Thanks. Does Pat know?
Well, it may be good to disconnect from Zoom because it would be good. Didn't want to close that out.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe hold the camera so they can see.
Thanks, Andrea. So for everybody watching on Zoom, I think what we're going to do now is disconnect the Zoom only because it probably is not going to be a good experience. You won't really be able to see what we're doing. I'll show you quickly. I don't know if you can see this. Here, let me turn the camera around. So this is a little table that Andrea put together for Riley. You can see here, these are Riley's ashes, and this is a jar that Andrea had made for Riley, and we're going to put the ashes in the jar, and then we're going to walk down to the lighthouse and place some flowers at Riley's stone. So that might be hard to just follow along from the Zoom. So we'll disconnect. It's the end of the program that we have put together, and just thanks everyone for joining us and celebrating this with us. And Mom, Dad, Ricky, Todd, thank you for joining. I'll give you a call later today.
Thank you. I don't think they can hear me.
And Andrea says thank you too. And Chris, thanks very much, and we'll give you a call later on too. Thanks everyone. We'll sign off for now.
Bye.
Bye.